Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Show. My name is Andrew Claudio, a.k.a. GMAC, and it's time to preview another Knicks matchup, this time on MLK Day, an afternoon matinee of sorts. I guess I don't know what the timing would be to actually call it a matinee. I guess in the movie times these days, or I guess the curtain call times these days for Broadway, anything above 3 p.m. is a matinee. So this technically qualifies. The Knicks will take on the Atlanta Hawks for the third time this year, the first time since the in-season tournament, where the Hawks emerged victorious in a bit of an embarrassing ending, I'll say, for the Knicks. We'll see if the Knicks can at least retaliate on the court in the sense of getting a W after Trae Young rolled the dice on them in the in-season tournament at Madison Square Garden. I'm honored to have my yearly check-in right now with the voice of the Atlanta Hawks for several decades at this point. I don't even know what the start point is at this point. Steve Holman, welcome back to the Knicks Film School Podcast, sir.
Andrew, thank you. It's my 40th this year.
My goodness.
A bit of a milestone, yeah. I was 12 when I started. No.
12 when you start. I see what you did there. It is. You are whatever age you want to say you started with. It is completely up to you, sir. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me in year 40. So let's start there. You still enjoying it?
Oh, I love it. I look forward to it all the time. I mean, I've, walked all over New York today, even though it's snowing and raining, and, walked up and down Fifth Avenue and Sixth and did all that. So it's great. I love being on the road. I love going to all the different cities still. And the games, the games especially are fun. And the game, Dr. King Day, is 3,041 consecutive for me. So
look at you. Well, congratulations, sir. I'm honored to be here before 3,041 consecutive games that you're doing with the Hawks. What city? I mean, obviously, I'm biased and hoping you say New York, but what city outside of Atlanta, do you look forward to going to the most on the road?
Well, I look forward to New York because I get to see my buddy John Sterling. We go out to dinner usually when I'm in town, so I get to see him. I also like Chicago a lot. Chicago's got great restaurants too, just like New York. And I'm a big fan of like Keen's when I come here to New York. And there's so many. You could go to a different place every night, for 100 years and have all great food. So I do. I love all the cities. I love New York. I love Chicago. We just left Boston. I like Boston too for good restaurants and things like that. So it's great. I still look forward to it every night.
Is there a city, like, obviously the NBA has talked expansion lately, and there's the Vegas opportunity, and then the Seattle rumor of it coming back. I mean, do you have any thought of like, oh wow, I might get the chance to go back to Seattle again consistently, or maybe the NBA will bless us with a Vegas team so I can go to Vegas for work?
Oh, I certainly enjoyed Seattle when they were in the league. It's a great city, and I think they'll get a team back, whether it's going to be an expansion or another team will move from somewhere else. I think Vegas will definitely get a team. Same thing, whether expansion or move a team. There are 32. There's 30 owners, and I don't know if they want to split that pot 32 ways. They get the extra money for the fee for expansion fees. But I almost think that they don't rather try to move two teams and keep it at 30. And that way, all that TV money and the billions of dollars that are coming in now, they wouldn't have to split two other ways. But, I don't know. That's just the thought I had.
Yeah, it depends, I guess, what the bottom line is. Is it getting two extra teams with two extra sets of revenue getting punched into the league? I just know from a talent standpoint, I'm sure you'd agree. This league may
not be enough.
Like two teams. I mean, LaMelo Ball is having an otherworldly season on a 9 or 10 win Hornets team. Even like the Wizards at this point have Bilal Coulibaly and Jordan Poole and other guys that are great, and they have 6 wins so far this season. So even the quote unquote bad teams in the league have talented players on them.
So that's something for another day and another a bunch of people that are higher pay grade than we are.
Exactly. Much bigger pay grade. They'll discuss this and they'll figure out where the league's going. What I am curious to get your thoughts on is where this Atlanta Hawks team is going. Because the last time the Knicks played them, it was an originally not planned game at Madison Square Garden because of the NBA Cup. And the Hawks, a very good second half performance. Dyson Daniels, the defense he has played this season, has been otherworldly. The Great Barrier Thief, one of my favorite nicknames in the sport at the moment. And yet it doesn't seem, at least from an outsider's perspective, although they have won 3 straight, that's catapulted them into, making a running at like the 4 seed or anything higher in the standings. They're still sitting around a 6 seed in the Eastern Conference. So you just tell me, how have the highs and the lows been balanced so far this season with the Hawks? I
think you can take about the first 10, 12 games out, really, because they had 3, 4, 5 guys out every night for the first 12 games of the year. So, nobody really, nobody cares about that they don't see that. They just know what the record is. And, Parcells always said you are what your record is, but they've been much better since that first couple of weeks of the season, first several weeks. They've got guys back and healthy. When they're healthy, they're as deep as anyone. I mean, they've got guys coming off the bench like DeAndre Hunter right now, Bogey Bogdanovic. I mean, those are 2 guys that, a lot of teams would like to have in their starting lineup. So they bring those guys off the bench. And Onyeka Okongwu, he's another guy that, people probably don't follow on a regular basis, but he's been terrific. The other night he had a 22 and 21 game. In fact, he's a candidate for Player of the Week this week in the NBA, in the Eastern Conference.
Interesting. So to your point about when they're healthy, the lineup of Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson, and Clint Capella in 230 possessions this year, their second most used lineup is plus 12 on the season. When you swipe out, to your point, Onyeka Okongwu or Clint Capella for Okongwu, they're plus 9. So in 2 of their 3 most used lineups this year, they've been outstanding, and their starting lineup with Risa Shea in for DeAndre Hunter is a positive.
Yeah, he's out for a few games. He's got a little quad injury, but he's been progressing nicely too. I mean, the great thing is about that is with all the guys that they have right now, they can kind of bring him along slowly. They've been starting him when he's been healthy every night, and he's been getting better every night. But now they don't have to have that pressure on him that as a number 1 pick to step in there like that right away.
Have you in your interactions with him, this is not your typical number 1 pick going to usually when you're a number 1 pick, you go to a team that's still rebuilding, a lot of pressure is put on you to be part of the solution to a team that's turning things around. This was a team that was in the play-in last year, whatever value people want to put on the play-in, that is like a thing. And, he still gets inserted into a starting lineup with all NBA candidates and a rising, a most improved candidate like Jalen Johnson. When you've interacted with them, do you get any sense that that he's like coming along slowly, or is it better that the expectations don't seem to be that high for a number 1 pick like that?
Well, I don't think there's any pressure on him. And the thing about him, for 19 years old, I mean, he just lets everything roll right off his back. I mean, he's been in pro basketball really for several years, so those guys start when they're 15, 16 years old over there. So he's seen it all pretty much, and nothing phases him. I mean, the size of the game, the size of the moment, it doesn't bother him at all. And he really knows how to play. That's the thing. I mean, he's had trouble getting some of his shots to fall, but he gets all the shots. So Quinn Snyder keeps telling him to keep shooting and don't worry about it. So I think he's going to be fine. I think he's really going to be good.
Yeah. To your point, by the way, about the first couple weeks of the season, they started off 7-11. The Atlanta Hawks.
7-11. That's it.
And they're 15-8 since then. So, and over that stretch, they got a really good defensive rating at 111.7.
Yeah, I was paying attention. I've been paying attention for those first 40 games.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is, like the net rating's not crazy, which is like, it seems like they either play a lot of close games or it's like a blowout here one way, a blowout here the other way. Obviously, we've seen in New York in certain situations what the heroics of Trae Young can bring. And I think let's lead to some questions about Trey at this point in his career. Look, I have no questions about the NBA scuttlebutt or what his future could potentially be in Atlanta, but I am curious about the construct of this team after 2 years of DeJounte Murray. And just from like an unbiased perspective as an NBA fan, this seems to just be a team that makes a lot of sense. You're surrounding him with switchy wings that can guard multiple positions. I watched a little bit of the Celtics game and how when the Celtics would try to use the pick and roll to get him into the action, it's still like the Hawks seem to have a counter very quickly by bringing either Dyson Daniels into the action, forcing the ball movement, and then you're pre-switching to make sure that you don't have Trey as a liability. Do you get that sense too, that this season's team just fits so much better and maximizes Trey?
They tried the thing with DeJounte. It was worth a shot, and it didn't work. And to the management credit of the Hawks, they went ahead and moved on. I mean, they didn't diddle around with that and wait. And they ended up, getting their draft picks back too, pretty much mostly from New Orleans, the Pelicans. And they threw in Dyson Daniels basically. And, he hardly played when he was in New Orleans. And here he comes here and he's going to be defensive player of the year, or at least a shot at it. He leads the league in steals and deflections, and he's always involved in the defense. I call him Blockadile Dundee when he blocks shots myself. He likes that one too.
It's up there with Great Barrier Thief. I think I might repurpose that and credit you. I promise. Yeah,
it's a little bit easier to roll off the tongue while you're doing the game, Mm-hmm. But he likes that. But I mean, he's been terrific. And Jalen Johnson is another kid that a lot of people don't know who he is or paid much attention to him. But he's been terrific. He's playing at an all-star level this year. When he's been healthy, he's averaging 20 and 10 right now, and he just turned 22, 23 years old. So you got Reza Shea 19, Dyson's like 21, 22. Trey just turned 27, I think, or 26. It's his 7th year. So they've got a young squad right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of the youthfulness of the squad, that usually speaks to the beginning of a run, where you've got a little bit of patience in the current core that you've put together. And, Knicks fans, we watched the Knicks go all in this offseason between the trade for Mikal Bridges, the trade for Karl-Anthony Towns. But we remember the Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Obi Toppin, Quentin Grimes era, where it seemed as if like progress doesn't necessarily have to be linear. And you can, be a little bit more patient in how high the highs end up being with the Knicks. I guess my curiosity is what does a disappointing Hawks season look like? If it's just like a 6 seed and you force a team to a first round, a tough 7-game or 6-game first round playoff series, is that looked at as a positive, or is there any greater heights?
I feel as though they feel pretty confident about what they can do. I mean, I believe they're the only team in the league that has beaten Cleveland twice, the Knicks twice, and Boston twice.
That is true. That is true.
They also won a game in Milwaukee this year, out of all these wins. And like I say, when they've been healthy, they can play with anybody. And I don't think they look at making the first round and getting knocked out in a tough series as a success at all. I think they feel as though they can do a lot better than that. But the East is tough. I mean, you've got to get into that top 6. That's not going to be easy. Right now they're number 6 by percentage points, but everything can change. I mean, I think they're 3 games behind the Knicks in the loss column. They're tied with Indiana. Orlando's right there with 20. Miami's got 20. So they're all right there. And it's going to be a scramble the second half. We just hit game 41 in Boston, so that's the halfway mark. So 41 more to go. We'll see what happens.
I guess we'll see what happens.
We get to play the Knicks twice more here.
That is true, and one gets to be at the down in Atlanta as well at State Farm. So we'll see what happens. I guess the thought from what you're alluding to is that they could be this year's Pacers, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be some injury luck. No,
I think they could be. And to get back to Trey, I mean, Trey has been terrific. I mean, he's leading the league in assists. By a pretty wide margin, and average and number of assists. He's done everything that Quinn has wanted him to do. He's really matured, I think, this year, being his 7th year. He's married. He's got a couple of kids now. I really think that makes a difference. And he seems to be really at peace with himself right now. I don't think he's worried about, who doesn't like him or who's going to be who's not going to vote him on the All NBA team or who's not going to put him on the All-Star squad. I think he really feels, and Quinn Snyder's done a lot of that for him. He's been terrific for him, and Quinn couldn't be happier. Right? Quinn says every night that he does exactly everything that he wants him to do.
I don't know how much you pay attention to this, the online noise and the trade rumors and the transaction fascination that
Not
the
much.
NBA has.
I try not to do too much.
Well, good on you, first of all. Yeah. But I wonder if some of the peace that he experiences, and you'd tell me better than anyone, like how much did he pay attention to his name being floated around in off-season conversations, and whether the fact that seems to have disappeared has that contributed to his piece as well?
I think so. I think he knows he's going to be here. I think he feels comfortable. He feels good. And yes, I think human nature is that you do follow that stuff. And if you don't do it personally, you've got people that do for you. I mean, you've got friends, you've got relatives, you've got everybody, texting you and calling you. Did you see what this guy wrote? Did you see what, did you see what those bozos on the Knicks Film School said about you?
All of us. Yes.
That kind of thing, but I think they're aware pretty much of that. I think these days you have to be with social media. You have to be aware of what's going on.
I don't know what you're talking about. Us bozos at Knicks Film School has never said anything slanderous about Trae Young or things that he's done at Madison Square Garden.
I'm just using that as an example of.
Yeah, of course. Well, the interesting thing about the Hawks, and I guess this will be the only transactional question I do have for you, because you're right. They seem to be a deep team, and when they're healthy, they've looked like they could beat anybody, to the point of the teams that you've already mentioned that they've beaten this season. So I guess I'm curious, do you see them making any type of substantial rotation move at the February 6th deadline this year? I honestly, I don't know. I don't know what their thoughts are. They keep it pretty close to the vest, as most teams do. I think if there's probably one area that they might be looking at, it's backup point guard, because Buffkin, who had been Trae's first backup, had shoulder surgery, so he's out for the year. So they may want to look. They've used Jalen Johnson to bring the ball up. They've used Dyson Daniels has brought it up. A guy named Vit Krejci has brought the ball up too for the Hawks, and he's been terrific on defense, and he can shoot threes and that kind of thing. So we've got a bunch of players on this team, I think, that are I don't want to say shock the world to people, but it's not like your every household a day Sports Center team right now. You know how that is. If it's not LeBron, it's not on Sports Center. I obviously, as a Knicks fan and someone who does the Knicks content creation, I recognize the Knicks for clicks and the popularity that comes from adding Knicks to your title. Shout out to SEO. So yeah, the under the radar teams in different markets. I don't even think Atlanta. I mean, you tell me, should I consider Atlanta a small market? Because I think it's one of the more popular cities, maybe not by populace.
Atlanta's the seventh market in the country, I mean,
that's my thought, is that even in Atlanta, it doesn't get the attention that a New York or an LA or just the Cowboys get on the national.
Well, I think in Atlanta, everybody follows the teams. But it's not like you're going to jump off. You're not going to jump off a bridge if they lose. It's like, people come to the games. We've had sellouts almost every night. People come to the game. They want us to win, and when we win, everybody's happy. But when we lose, people are going to go to Buckhead and go out and have a drink and have a good time. It's like they've been to the theater, enjoyed the night, and it's too bad they lost, or it's nice that they won. That's the way it goes.
You could co-sign this if you'd like, but so I went to school down south for college, and this is just something I noticed when I wasn't living in the Northeast. The option to go out after your team plays just changes your perspective on things. It's why I understand why Miami Heat fans are the way that they are. Oh, we're losing? Great. I'm going to go to South Beach. Like, I'm just going to go have fun instead. And in the Northeast, during our winter sports, we have one option when the game is over: stay inside and be miserable, which is why a lot of Knicks fans stay inside and be miserable after so many games.
Shots and beers after the game, right?
Bingo. In your living room, though. That's the thing. It's not go out to drown your sorrows at your favorite place to communicate or commune with other Knicks fans, you know?
Take a couple of gummies and go to bed, right?
Bingo. Exactly. Especially today. So the Atlanta dynamic, I've never actually asked you this question. You'd be an expert on the subject. And this is something that I'm curious about because like we have a lot of high profile teams in New York, the Yankees, the Knicks. I'm a Mets fan, so I would have to throw them into the mix. Shout out Juan Soto. But the Atlanta dynamic, where do the Hawks, like who would you say would be like the number one team of Atlanta? Like Atlanta is a blank town first and foremost.
I think by far Georgia Bulldogs football. Okay. Georgia football is number one. I'd say the Braves are right there. The Falcons are right there. The Hawks, they're all of that same kind of, and United is very popular, the soccer team, because they won a championship right away out of the gate. And Arthur Blank, who owns the Falcons, owns that team, the soccer team. So they're pretty popular too. You see a lot of people with those scarves, walking around in Atlanta, those United scarves. So the teams are all popular. I mean, people like the teams. It's just like it's not life or death like on the talk shows and everything every day.
Man, what it would be like to live in a city where it's not life and death if your sports team loses. I wish don't wish I.
Everybody's more worried about the ice storm coming in now on Tuesday than they are, right now about how the Hawks are doing.
Yes, as it's currently snowing in the Big Apple as we speak. So we'll see what happens. Before you get out of here, I'd be remiss if I didn't get your thoughts on the Knicks and what they did this offseason, what they've done through the first half of the season. I've been going through the national podcast cycle lately. Obviously, my friends over at the Game Theory podcast did this too. Everybody seems to have them in the top 4 or 5, like at the lowest 6 or 7 of best teams in the NBA, which usually would be a good thing. And then you go to the Knicks bubble and it's everything they're not. Right. So I'm curious from someone with a national perspective or just an outsider's perspective, what your thought is on it.
I think the Knicks are really good. I think you're a top 4 team in the East right now still. I wasn't sure when they made the trade, whether it was going to be a good thing because you kind of, just from the outside in, it looked like you traded a little heart and soul out of the team, to get the talent. You've got Karl-Anthony Towns, who's terrific. I mean, he's one of those great stars in the league, but the chemistry is so important. So I think just like a lot of teams in the league, we're going to have to see how it all shakes out the second half of the year as far as that chemistry goes, because it's always shaky to take a good team and make a big trade like that and trade guys, like Hartenstein. I love him. I think he had balls for you guys. He was one of the guys, and Julius Randle. For Eddie, all the faults. I know everybody, moaned and groaned about him sometimes, but he's got a set of balls on him too. I like him. Yeah.
Unfortunately, the CBA created a rule that the Knicks were capped at what they could offer Hartenstein, and guy's a Houston native and was able to go live in Oklahoma for double, maybe even double and a half. I think what the Knicks were allowed to offer him.
Taxes.
Right. So you take away the New York City taxes as well. And unfortunately, that was just, it made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
Right.
And so to your point about them switching their identity a little bit, they went out, made the trade for Bridges, made sure they went all in on Villanova for 3 months. And then before they ever played a game with the 4 Villanova boys playing together, they traded Dante DiVincenzo and obviously Julius for Karl-Anthony Towns.
Has he forgiven them yet?
I think... so which side has forgiven them?
Has he forgiven them yet?
So John Krasinski of The Athletic wrote a really good profile of Dante that it was very clearly like 2-3 months into the season. And it was only recently that he started to get over the fact that he doesn't play for the Knicks anymore. That home that he built in New York, just on the court and within the fan base. You want to talk about playoff heroes, hit one of the biggest shots in franchise history in Game 2 against the Sixers. It just does. This is a human reaction. Like I've changed jobs before, but I've never had to move for it. And it wasn't in this. I mean, usually it's been my choice when I've changed jobs. And Dante, because of the nature of the NBA, I mean,
he had no choice. Yeah.
This is what happens. Like I feel for Julius too, because he's got 2 young kids, 1 on the way. And in the midst of all that, having to move minutes before the season's starting, it's a transition for your entire family.
It could get you upset for sure.
Yeah. So it does look like he's started to embrace Minnesota. Cat, it seemed very quick that he embraced the Big Apple. And
I'm sure he did. Yeah, I don't think he had any trouble at all coming.
And he's a big Yankee fan apparently too, which just adds to it. So he got traded here as they were making a run to the World Series. So him and Josh Hart were able to enjoy that to an extent. I'm with you. The identity is slowly finding itself. They're really good. I do like the parallels though to what the Hawks did, what the Knicks did. Like I just did a Pistons pregame and like what they're doing for Cade, where you identify one player that's clearly your best player, and obviously with the Knicks it's Brunson, with the Hawks it's Trey, and every move you make after that is to maximize what that player is. And the Knicks were like, all right, we're gonna get all your college buddies, like Josh Hart's here, DiVincenzo's here, Miguel Bridges is here. We're going to go get Karl-Anthony Towns. So it's 5 out and you have all this room to operate in the mid range. And so like all of his efficiency numbers are mostly up. He's had a bit of a shooting slump at a certain point, but for the most part, he's been really good. And like you said, they're probably around a top 6 or 7 team in the sport, and we'll see what happens come playoff time, And I guess I'll be completely honest. I was sleeping on the Hawks going into that NBA Cup game, and then they showed me enough that I want no part of this as my first round matchup if this is the 3-6.
Right. Yeah, that's
which it would be at the moment.
Said that now, that's to that point where they say that about them. So we'll see how the last 41 go, but they've had a lot of road trips, so they've got some home games to make up to. So I think it's, we'll see how it all, it's like every team though. Every team, you have to stay healthy. I mean, that's the thing these days, with the 82 game schedule, and they're never going to change that 82 game schedule. They're not going to cut that down. And, I hear all those people talking about that all the time. They're not going to do that. That would take away revenue. I mean, revenue is what it's all about.
The funny part, Steve, I think they could change it, but it'll go the other way. If they add 2 more teams, they're going to make the season longer. So we have more games to account for. Why not? Why not? An 85 game schedule.
The European thing, I think, is coming too. I think that's going to happen.
What do you mean?
Like a European division or something, it's at some point over the next several years.
I'd be curious to see how they execute it,
I know. Yeah, well, I think maybe they'll have teams that are kind of like a G League affiliated. Then they'll bring those teams over there to play, each year. How they do now, the Paris and the London, and I think they want to do more of that. I'm pretty sure. So
interesting. Well, I don't know what the future holds for the NBA. I don't know what the future holds for either of these basketball teams, but if this does end up being a first round matchup, which like I said, as of right now, it would be, we're going to have to get Steve back on to preview another Knicks Hawks first round series. Hopefully, as far as I'm concerned, it goes a different way, but regardless, talk about long streaks staying in play. Hopefully, the streak is still alive. When you get there. Yeah, and we'll get you back on. Before you get out of here, please let the fine folks at home know where they can find you, Steve.
Twitter or X now, I guess we call it, Real Voice of Hawk. There's no S on it, just Real Voice of Hawk. And I'm on Instagram, Voice of Hawks, I think is my thing. But I'm kind of, I'm not real big into it. Facebook, gotcha. I do, family and stuff like that, the dog and the grandkids, that kind of thing.
There you go. Yeah. I would recommend, no disrespect to your TV partners, but if people want to check out the radio broadcast of the Hawks game, if they're out of market and they don't want to pay attention to Mike Breen and Clyde and the talent and Tyler Murray and all the talented people we have here in New York, how about if it's the national broadcast? You can still check out the radio.
When's Tyler going to be old enough to have a drink?
I have no idea. Ty's a friend of Knicks Film School, and it's amazing how like the very veteran voice that comes out of him, and it's like, okay, but you look like you're in your 20s, which by the way, he is. So I know it's impressive to see,
I sort of remember one in my 20s. I don't know. I guess I do.
Listen, I know it's not a competition, but I'm right there with you in the sense of I used to remember my 20s.
Right, exactly.
We'll see. Steve, it's always great catching up with you. It's always great to see you.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Hope you enjoy your time in the Big Apple.
Thank you.
And I hope your streak stays intact and we get to potentially do some playoff previews as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Knicks Film School pregame show. If you dug it, head over to iTunes for a 5-star rating and a review. I will be back tomorrow with a preview of the Knicks game against Little Brother over in Brooklyn. But until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the game tonight, and I'll speak with you soon. Peace.